Hello and welcome to Favorite Rugby Beyond Favorite Sports. But today, Six Nations look ahead. It is round 2 of the Six Nations, and we had a very interesting opening round last week where already a couple of favorites, or a favorite, has really emerged. And but very interesting to see how his teams respond, especially two teams who put in very underwhelming performance who actually get the weekend underway in the forms of Scotland versus France. England and Wales, who had some very poor moments, but also some very good moments, sort of seem to battle with their own inconsistencies in the first weekend. They're going head to head, and then Ireland will be looking to make it 2 from 2 against Italy. We're going to look at all the fixtures and sort of break each one down a little bit as to sort of what we're expecting with regards to team selection, as well as some of sort of what we want to answer over the weekend. Just a little bit before you do that, please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Right, so there we go. Those are the fixtures for the weekend. We will be live for all 3 of them, by the way, so make sure you come and join us in the watch-alongs. I'll be with you for the Saturday games, Scotland versus France and England versus Wales, so you can come and join me on those. But let's start with the first game, Scotland versus France. Right, so Scotland continue to be a side which are a bit of an enigma. You know, they on their day they can really compete with most teams. They can push teams. They can it can be devastating on attack. But unfortunately, they're a side that can also be very beatable at times. And we saw them almost throw away the game against Wales this past weekend, which would have been an absolute nightmare had it actually happened. They managed to sort of get that victory by just a singular point. But overall performance that would not have impressed Gregor Townsend. Speaking of performances that weren't very impressive, the French team just didn't look like the French team you've seen over the last few years. I've already seen a couple of articles, asking about if there's pressure on Fabien Galtier, which I think is a bit harsh, given the fact of how good this French side have been. But they now need to take the next steps. This is supposed to be a generational French side, and they got pretty well classed by Ireland on Friday. And you must see a couple of players in the likes of Antoine Dupont and Romain Intermac, which every single time I mention, everyone's quick to tell me that Ireland were missing Gary Ringrose and Mac Hansen. Which I think is a really poor comparison. I mean, yes, Gary Ringrose is a world-class player. At outside centre, you've got Robbie Henshaw, so a very adequate replacement there. Matt Hansen's a fantastic player, but plays out on the wing. And not to say the wings are important, but they're not quite the same as your usual half-back pairing, your two big decision makers, and the players who have been the genesis of such a good French side in the past few years missing out. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this weekend goes, because France have got to go out and prove a point. This Scotland side can beat this French side. I genuinely believe it. But in order to do so, the Scotland side needs to find that consistency. They need to find that 80-minute performance that they sometimes just can't really find. They're going to beat France, and all of a sudden they put themselves in potential, Six Nations winning territory, because they'll then be taking on England in 2 weeks' time, and they'll be at home against England. They then go away against Italy before having to finish Six Nations at home away against Ireland. So I would really, really love to see Scotland pushing France this weekend, maybe getting a victory, going on to maybe get a beat in England side, which they have had a habit of doing the past few years. And maybe that last weekend could actually be a Scotland versus Ireland to finish Six Nations type of situation, which would be the perfect scenario. But maybe a little bit unlikely. If we look at the England versus Wales, two sides very similar in terms of the journeys that they are embarking. Very different sides to what they were maybe a year or two ago. Coaches who have not been there particularly long and now have a full World Cup cycle. So I expect improvement. We already see improvement from both teams during their games. We saw them trying to sort of put in new structures, new tactics, and new learnings into that game. And whilst it was sloppy at times, and in fact very sloppy at times for both teams, this is a new weekend, and I think two teams going through transitional periods means that this one I find a very difficult one to call. In theory, England with home advantage, I think a more settled squad should take it, but that Welsh side rocked up in the second half and pushed Scotland, so you never know if that Welsh side picks up. Maybe then they can also really push England. And then the final one Sunday, you'd expect this to be a pretty comfortable victory for Ireland. Italy were very brave and pushed England all the way. Ireland are a whole different kettle of fish, really. But again, for Italy, it's about progress. Taking a step forward, making themselves more difficult to beat. I think that's the big thing about this Italian side. They've always played, in the last few years, they played a lot of flair, for example, and they've been really fun to watch. but they've been beatable, and they've got to make themselves hard to beat. They've got to make themselves hard to score points against. So I think that's probably the big thing that they need to try and work on this weekend. For Ireland, it's about taking the next step. It's about building on that French victory. It's about making sure that, you know, the systems and your new players you're filtering in, like a Jack Crowley, can really start to get grips with how it is to play for Ireland in preparation for, well, obviously to win the Six Nations, but obviously in preparation for a very big outgoing tour against the current world champions, and sort of re-establish themselves as the number one team in the world, if that is what the big goal is, which I imagine it is. It's been between World Cup years. But yeah, let me know what you think. Any early score predictions, any sort of comments on the games and the matchups for this weekend? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please do smash the like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.